The cargo bay of the transport ship Meridian's Edge hummed with nervous energy as 24 cadets from the Galactic Defense Academy prepared for their final combat assessment. Among the various alien species represented, one human sat quietly in the corner, methodically checking her equipment with practiced precision. Maya Chen had always been the outsider. While her classmates boasted about their species' natural advantages, the Corvallians' enhanced reflexes, the Thrakari's armored hide, the Zelani's telepathic coordination, she simply listened and learned. Her human physiology seemed unremarkable compared to the evolutionary marvels surrounding her. No natural weapons, no enhanced senses, no special abilities that made other species formidable warriors. The assessment would take place on Kepler 442b, a hostile world with dense jungles, unpredictable weather, and dangerous indigenous life forms. Each cadet would be dropped alone into different sectors with only basic survival gear and a training weapon. Their mission was simple: survive for 72 hours while completing 3 objectives scattered across their assigned territory. "Listen up, cadets," barked Commander Voss, a grizzled Corvallian whose 4 arms moved in synchronized gestures as he spoke. "This is not a simulation. The creatures down there are real. The environment is hostile, and your performance will determine whether you graduate or spend another year in remedial training." Zeftar, a massive Thrakari whose scales gleamed like polished obsidian, snorted dismissively as his gaze fell on Maya. "I still don't understand why they allow humans in combat roles," he rumbled to his companions. "They're soft, slow, and weak, better suited for technical or diplomatic positions." Several other cadets nodded in agreement. Throughout their training, Maya had consistently ranked in the middle of the class. She wasn't the fastest, strongest, or most technically skilled. She didn't excel in any particular area that would make instructors take notice. She was, by all appearances, completely average. Korvek, a serpentine Zelani, whose mental abilities allowed him to sense emotions, coiled his muscular body as he prepared his gear. "The human radiates calm," he observed to the others. "Either she's supremely confident or completely oblivious to the danger we're about to face." Maya continued her equipment check, appearing not to hear the conversations around her. She tested her multi-tool, examined her ration packs, and verified the charge on her training blaster. Everything was functional, organized, and ready. Her movements were economical and purposeful, but nothing about them suggested exceptional skill. As the ship entered Kepler 442b's atmosphere, the artificial gravity fluctuated, causing several cadets to stumble. Maya remained seated, her body moving fluidly with the ship's motion as if she had anticipated each lurch and roll. The observation went unnoticed by most, dismissed as luck by those who saw it. The drop pods were cramped, single-occupant capsules designed to deliver each cadet to their designated sector. As Maya sealed herself into her assigned pod, she ran through the mission parameters one final time. 3 objectives: locate and secure a crashed reconnaissance drone, establish communication with the orbital station from a specific coordinate, and neutralize a malfunctioning defense turret left from an abandoned research facility. The pod's launch was violent, pressing Maya into her restraints as it rocketed away from the transport. Through the small viewport, she watched the planet's surface rush up to meet her, an endless canopy of alien vegetation punctuated by rocky outcroppings and winding rivers. Her landing zone appeared to be a clearing surrounded by dense jungle, approximately 12 kilometers from her first objective. Impact was jarring despite the pod's shock absorption systems. Maya emerged into humid air thick with the scent of decaying vegetation and something else, a musky odor that suggested large predators. The jungle around her clearing pulsed with unseen life, creating a symphony of alien sounds that would have been overwhelming to most humans. But Maya had spent countless hours studying xenobiology, and she could identify many of the calls echoing through the trees. She quickly dismantled her landing pod according to protocol, scattering the components to prevent them from being used by potential threats. Her gear was packed efficiently in a tactical harness that distributed weight evenly across her body. Within minutes of landing, she had oriented herself using the planet's twin suns and begun moving toward her first objective. The jungle was a maze of massive trees whose trunks could house small buildings, connected by vines as thick as a person's torso. The canopy blocked most sunlight, creating a perpetual twilight filled with shifting shadows. Maya moved through this environment with surprising ease, her footsteps barely disturbing the thick carpet of decomposing leaves. What her classmates didn't know was that Maya Chen was not the unremarkable human she appeared to be. She was the daughter of Colonel Sarah Chen, one of Earth's most decorated Special Forces operators, and Dr. James Chen, a leading expert in xenobiology and survival tactics. She had been raised in environments that would challenge most adults, learning skills that no academy curriculum could provide. By age 10, she could navigate by the stars, track animals across various terrains, and identify edible plants on dozens of different worlds. By 15, she had mastered multiple martial arts, become proficient with weapons ranging from primitive blades to advanced energy weapons, and developed an intuitive understanding of predator behavior that bordered on supernatural. But Maya had learned early that revealing these abilities attracted unwanted attention. Her parents had enemies, people who would use their daughter to get to them, so she had perfected the art of appearing ordinary, of blending into the background while observing everything around her. As she moved through the jungle toward her first objective, Maya's senses were fully engaged. She noticed the subtle changes in insect activity that indicated the presence of larger creatures, the way certain plants oriented themselves to suggest prevailing wind patterns, and the barely perceptible paths carved by indigenous animals. This was information that could mean the difference between life and death on a world like this. 3 hours into her mission, Maya encountered her first significant challenge. A pack of creatures the size of large dogs but with the predatory instincts of Earth's most dangerous hunters had picked up her trail. The local database identified them as shadow stalkers, pack hunters with natural camouflage that made them nearly invisible in the jungle's filtered light. Most cadets would have either tried to outrun them or taken a defensive position to fight. Maya did neither. Instead, she climbed 20 meters up one of the massive trees, using branches and vines with an agility that seemed impossible for someone who had never demonstrated exceptional physical abilities during academy training. From her elevated position, she observed the pack's behavior patterns. Shadow stalkers were intelligent hunters, but they relied heavily on scent and ground-level tracking. After watching them search for her trail for nearly an hour, she quietly moved from tree to tree, always staying above them, until she had traveled 2 kilometers past their territory. The approach cost her time but conserved energy and avoided unnecessary conflict. It was a tactical decision that demonstrated strategic thinking beyond what her academy performance had suggested she possessed. As the day progressed, Maya's true nature became more apparent in subtle ways. She moved through the jungle with increasing confidence, reading the environment like a familiar book. When she stopped to rest, she chose locations that provided multiple escape routes while remaining concealed from above and below. Her water consumption was precisely calculated to maintain hydration while ensuring her supplies would last beyond the required time frame. Most tellingly, she was enjoying herself. The challenge of navigating hostile terrain, of matching wits with dangerous creatures, of solving survival problems with limited resources, this was what she had been trained for from childhood. The Academy's sterile training environments had felt like playing games compared to this real test of survival skills. As the twin suns began to set, casting the jungle into deeper shadows, Maya reached the coordinates of her first objective. The crashed reconnaissance drone lay in a small crater created by its impact, its hull partially buried under fallen branches and debris. The site showed signs of recent scavenger activity. Creatures had been investigating the crash, drawn by the unfamiliar scents and materials. Maya approached carefully, using techniques her mother had taught her for clearing potentially hostile areas. She circled the crash site twice at different distances, observing for signs of current occupation or hidden dangers. Only when she was certain the area was secure did she move in to examine the drone. The reconnaissance device was surprisingly intact, despite its violent landing. Its data core appeared undamaged, and the beacon that would allow her to upload the information to the orbital station was still functional. However, extracting the core would require disassembling part of the drone's housing, a process that would take time and create noise that might attract unwanted attention. As Maya worked, her enhanced hearing picked up sounds that made her freeze. Something large was moving through the jungle in her direction, and its approach pattern suggested intelligence rather than random wandering. She quickly completed her work on the drone, securing the data core in her equipment pack, and moved to a concealed position to observe. What emerged from the jungle defied the planet's known fauna classifications. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, with a bipedal stance, but distinctly non-humanoid proportions. Its hide was covered in natural armor plating, and its forearms ended in manipulator appendages, sophisticated enough to use tools. Most concerning was its behavior. It was clearly investigating the drone crash site with purpose and intelligence. Maya watched as the creature examined the areas where she had worked, noting the disturbance patterns she had left despite her careful approach. It was tracking her, and its body language suggested increasing agitation as it followed her trail. This was not a scenario covered in the Academy's curriculum. They were facing an indigenous species capable of complex reasoning and potentially hostile intentions. The creature's investigation led it directly to Maya's hiding spot. For a moment, they stared at each other across the jungle, clearing the human who had spent years learning to appear unremarkable, and the alien predator that had evolved to dominate its environment through intelligence and physical superiority. What happened next would reveal just how much Maya had been hiding from her academy classmates, and why her parents had trained her for situations far beyond what any cadet was expected to face. The alien creature moved with fluid grace despite its size, positioning itself between Maya and the most obvious escape routes. Its four eyes tracked her movements with disturbing intelligence, and she could see its mental processes working as it evaluated this unexpected encounter. The creature was clearly an apex predator, but it was also curious about this small bipedal intruder in its territory. Maya remained motionless, her breathing controlled and steady. Years of training had taught her that movement often triggered attack responses in predatory species, and this creature's body language suggested it was still deciding whether she represented a threat or potential prey. Her hand rested casually near her training blaster, but drawing the weapon would almost certainly escalate the situation into violence she might not survive. The standoff continued for several minutes, with both participants evaluating their options. The creature tilted its head, studying Maya with an expression that seemed almost puzzled. Her scent was unfamiliar, her behavior was non-threatening, and her size suggested she could not pose a significant danger to something of its capabilities. Slowly, carefully, Maya began to back away from the clearing. She moved with deliberate precision, never turning her back on the creature but gradually increasing the distance between them. The alien watched but did not pursue, apparently satisfied that the strange small intruder was leaving its territory voluntarily. Only when she was several hundred meters away did Maya allow herself to breathe normally. The encounter had been more dangerous than anything the Academy simulations had prepared them for, and she suspected her classmates might not be as fortunate if they encountered similar situations. As night fell over the alien jungle, Maya found a secure location to establish her temporary camp. She chose a spot 20 meters up in one of the massive trees, on a broad branch that would support her weight while remaining hidden from ground-based observers. Her camp was invisible from below and defensible from multiple directions. She ate a small portion of her rations while reviewing the day's progress. One objective completed, 2 remaining, and approximately 60 hours left in the assessment period. The timeline was manageable, but the encounter with the indigenous creature suggested this world held dangers beyond the official briefing parameters. As she prepared to rest, Maya allowed herself a small smile. For the first time since joining the academy, she felt like she was in an environment where her true skills were relevant. The jungle night was filled with sounds that would have terrified most of her classmates, but to her they represented a complex ecosystem she was beginning to understand. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and she suspected some of her fellow cadets might need help they didn't even know they required. Maya Chen was finally in a place where being the quiet girl who noticed everything might become a significant advantage. Dawn on Kepler 442b arrived with a spectacular display as the twin suns crested the jungle canopy, their combined light filtering through the dense foliage in shafts of gold and amber. Maya woke naturally, her internal clock synchronized with the planet's rotation after just one night. She had slept in 2-hour intervals, a technique that allowed for rest while maintaining awareness of potential threats. Her elevated position provided an excellent view of the surrounding jungle, and she took advantage of the morning light to study the terrain leading to her second objective. The communication relay point was located on a rocky outcropping approximately 8 kilometers away, but the direct route would take her through what appeared to be a swampy lowland filled with standing water and dense vegetation. As she packed her gear, Maya's enhanced hearing picked up an unusual sound carried on the morning breeze, mechanical noise that didn't belong in the natural environment. The distinctive whine of an energy weapon charging, followed by the characteristic discharge pattern of a training blaster being fired rapidly. Someone was in trouble. Academy protocol was clear. Cadets were supposed to complete their individual assessments without assistance from others. Helping another cadet could result in disqualification for both parties. But the sound pattern suggested someone was fighting for their life, and Maya's moral compass wouldn't allow her to ignore that regardless of regulations. She quickly triangulated the source of the weapon fire approximately 2 kilometers northeast of her position, in the direction of the swampy lowlands. Moving through the trees with the fluid grace that had become second nature, Maya covered the distance in 20 minutes while remaining completely silent. What she found when she reached the source of the disturbance was exactly what she had feared. Zeftar, the massive Thrakari who had questioned humanity's place in combat roles, was trapped on a small island of solid ground in the middle of the swamp. His natural armor plating was scored with deep scratches, and his breathing was labored from exhaustion. Surrounding him in the murky water were at least a dozen creatures that looked like a nightmarish fusion of crocodile and octopus. They had the predatory patience of ambush hunters, circling their trapped prey while testing his defenses with quick lunges that forced him to expend energy and ammunition defending himself. Zeftar's training blaster was overheating from constant use, and Maya could see that his power cells were nearly depleted. The creatures seemed to sense his weakening state and were becoming bolder with each attack. Within minutes, he would be defenseless against predators that had evolved to hunt in packs with sophisticated coordination. Maya assessed the tactical situation with the analytical mind her parents had trained her to develop. Direct intervention would violate Academy protocol and potentially get them both killed. The creatures were too numerous and well-positioned for a frontal assault. But there was another option, one that would require her to reveal capabilities she had kept hidden for years. Moving to a position directly above the swamp, Maya began implementing a strategy that combined advanced fieldcraft with intimate knowledge of predator psychology. She started by creating distractions at multiple points around the swamp's perimeter, using thrown objects and mimicked sounds to suggest the presence of additional threats in the jungle. The swamp predators were intelligent enough to recognize that their isolated prey might have allies, and their coordinated attack began to falter as they divided their attention between Zeftar and the potential threats around them. Maya used this confusion to move closer, positioning herself where she could influence the situation without being detected. What happened next demonstrated why Maya's parents had trained her in techniques far beyond conventional military doctrine. Using a combination of precisely thrown projectiles and carefully timed sound mimicry, she created the impression of a much larger force moving through the jungle around the swamp. The effect was subtle but devastating to the predators' pack coordination. Confused and increasingly nervous about threats they couldn't identify, the creatures began to withdraw from their attack on Zeftar. They didn't flee entirely but spread out to investigate the disturbances, breaking their coordinated assault pattern and giving the exhausted Thrakari breathing room to recover. But Maya wasn't finished. Moving with the patience of a master hunter, she began picking off individual predators using techniques her mother had learned in Earth's most dangerous conflict zones. Each elimination was silent and precise, removing creatures from the pack without alerting the others to her presence. To Zeftar, it appeared that his attackers were simply disappearing one by one, taken by unseen jungle predators or perhaps fleeing from threats he couldn't detect. His reptilian features showed confusion, but also growing hope as the pressure on his position decreased. Within an hour, the immediate threat had been neutralized. The surviving swamp predators had retreated to safer hunting grounds, unwilling to risk further losses to unknown dangers. Zeftar found himself alone on his island refuge, exhausted but alive. With no clear understanding of how the situation had resolved itself so favorably, Maya observed from concealment as the Thrakari cadet gathered himself and began moving toward firmer ground. His movements were stiff from fatigue and stress, but he was uninjured and would be able to continue his assessment. She had accomplished her objective without revealing her involvement or violating the letter of Academy regulations. But as she prepared to continue toward her own objectives, Maya heard something that changed everything. Multiple voices, calling for help from different directions in the jungle. The distress calls were coming from at least 3 different locations, suggesting that several cadets were facing situations beyond their training. The assessment was supposed to test individual survival skills, but it was becoming clear that the Academy had underestimated the dangers of Kepler 442b. The indigenous life forms were more intelligent and aggressive than the briefing materials had indicated, and multiple cadets were in mortal danger. Maya faced a decision that would define not only her Academy career but her understanding of what it meant to be human. in a galaxy full of supposedly superior species. She could continue with her individual assessment, complete her objectives, and graduate with a respectable but unremarkable record. Or she could reveal her true capabilities and attempt to help her classmates survive this increasingly dangerous situation. The choice was easier than she had expected. Despite their dismissive attitudes toward humanity, these were her fellow cadets, young people who had trained alongside her and shared the dream of serving in the Galactic Defense Forces. She wouldn't abandon them to face threats they were unprepared for, regardless of the consequences to her own career. Moving through the jungle with purpose now rather than stealth, Maya began tracking the sources of the distress calls. Her enhanced senses and intimate knowledge of predator behavior patterns allowed her to navigate the hostile environment with shocking efficiency. What would have taken other cadets hours to traverse, she covered in minutes. The first cadet she located was Korvek, the serpentine Zelani whose telepathic abilities had made him confident about the assessment. He was trapped in a network of vine-like plants that had ensnared him while he attempted to cross a seemingly harmless meadow. The vines were slowly constricting, and his struggles were only making the situation worse. Maya approached the situation with the methodical precision her father had taught her for dealing with unknown xenobiological threats. The plants showed clear signs of being a single organism rather than multiple individual vines, which meant they would have a central nervous system that could be disrupted. Using her multi-tool as a cutting implement, she traced the vine network to its source, a bulbous mass hidden beneath the meadow's surface. A precise strike to what appeared to be the organism's primary ganglion caused the entire network to relax, freeing Korvek from the constricting vines. The Zelani cadet was unconscious but breathing, his serpentine body marked with pressure bruises but no serious injuries. Maya quickly administered basic medical aid and positioned him in a location where he would be safe while recovering consciousness. She left water and basic supplies within his reach, along with a simple note indicating the direction to safer terrain. The second distress call led her to a situation that was even more dangerous. Two cadets, a Corvallian named Hexus and an insectoid Chitari called Vexeska, had encountered what appeared to be a territorial dispute between two different apex predator species. Caught in the middle of the conflict, they were trapped in a shallow cave while massive creatures battled for dominance of the surrounding territory. Maya observed the situation from concealment, analyzing the behavior patterns of both predator species. One group resembled the creature she had encountered the previous day but moved in coordinated packs. The other was something entirely new, bipedal hunters with natural weapons and pack coordination that suggested advanced intelligence. The battle between the two species was devastating the local environment, with trees being uprooted and massive boulders thrown as weapons. The trapped cadets were safe in their cave for the moment, but the conflict showed no signs of resolution, and their supplies wouldn't last indefinitely. This situation required a different approach than Maya had used previously. Instead of eliminating threats or creating diversions, she needed to influence the behavior of highly intelligent predators engaged in a territorial dispute. It was a challenge that would require her to demonstrate skills that no academy curriculum could have taught. Drawing on knowledge gained from years of studying predator behavior with her father, Maya began implementing a strategy that bordered on madness. She positioned herself where both predator species could detect her presence, then began demonstrating behavior patterns that suggested she represented a threat to both groups. To creatures engaged in territorial combat, the appearance of a potential competitor for the disputed territory was more significant than their conflict with each other. Maya's actions marking territory boundaries, displaying aggressive postures, and creating signs of a sustained presence in the area convinced both predator species that they were facing a new threat that required their combined attention. The effect was exactly what she had hoped for. Faced with evidence of a mysterious competitor, the two predator species called a temporary truce and began investigating this new threat. Their search led them away from the cave where the cadets were trapped, giving Hexus and Vexka the opportunity to escape to safer terrain. But Maya's strategy came with a significant cost. She had made herself a target for two different species of apex predators, both of which were now actively hunting for the mysterious intruder they believed was challenging their territory. She would have to deal with that threat while completing her own objectives and potentially helping other cadets in distress. As she moved toward her second objective, Maya reflected on how dramatically the assessment had evolved beyond its original parameters. What was supposed to be an individual survival test had become a complex rescue operation that required skills and knowledge far beyond what any cadet was expected to possess. Her classmates were learning that the galaxy was a more dangerous place than Academy simulations had suggested, and that survival often required cooperation rather than individual achievement. But Maya was learning something else, that being human in a galaxy full of supposedly superior species meant being adaptable, creative, and willing to risk everything to help others, even when those others had dismissed your capabilities. The communication relay point was located on a rocky outcropping that provided excellent visibility of the surrounding jungle but also made her completely exposed to aerial threats. As Maya climbed toward the relay position, she could hear the sounds of her predator pursuit growing closer. The two species had joined forces in hunting for her, and their combined tracking abilities were formidable. She reached the relay point with minutes to spare, quickly establishing communication with the orbital station and uploading the data from the reconnaissance drone. The process required maintaining the connection for several minutes while the files transferred, leaving her vulnerable on the exposed rocks. The predators found her during the upload process. What emerged from the jungle below was a coordinated force of creatures that represented the apex of evolution on this hostile world. They had intelligence, natural weapons, pack coordination, and an intimate knowledge of their environment. Against any normal cadet, they would have been an insurmountable threat, but Maya Chen was not a normal cadet. As the upload completed and she prepared to face her pursuers, she allowed herself to stop hiding who she really was. For the first time since joining the academy, she was going to show everyone exactly what humans were capable of when their survival was on the line. The quiet girl who had spent years appearing unremarkable was about to demonstrate why Earth's most dangerous predator was not the creatures that hunted in its jungles or ruled its oceans, but the species that had learned to think, adapt, and never give up no matter how overwhelming the odds appeared to be. The rocky outcropping where Maya stood provided no cover and no escape routes. Below her, two species of apex predators that had never cooperated in their evolutionary history were working together with single-minded focus, hunting the small human who had dared to challenge their territorial claims. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Maya stood perfectly still at the edge of the cliff face. Her breathing was controlled, her posture relaxed, and her expression calm. To the predators below, she appeared trapped and helpless. They began their coordinated ascent up the rocky slopes, moving with the confidence of hunters who had cornered their prey. What they didn't understand was that Maya Chen had spent her entire life preparing for moments exactly like this one. The transformation began subtly. Maya's casual stance shifted into something that anyone trained in combat would have recognized as a ready position. Her muscles coiled like springs, her center of gravity lowered, and her hands moved to equipment positions with fluid precision. The unremarkable academy cadet was disappearing, replaced by something far more dangerous. The first predator to reach her position was one of the pack hunters, a creature the size of a small vehicle with natural armor plating and claws that could shred metal. It launched itself toward Maya with the devastating force that had made its species the dominant land predator on Kepler 442b. Maya moved. Her motion was unlike anything the academy instructors had ever seen from her during training sessions. She flowed around the creature's attack like water, using its own momentum against it while striking pressure points that her father's xenobiology expertise had taught her to identify. The massive predator crashed into the rock face where she had been standing, stunned by an impact it hadn't expected. But there were more coming. The bipedal hunters were climbing from multiple directions, their intelligence allowing them to coordinate an attack that would give their prey no escape options. Maya assessed their approach patterns in the seconds she had between encounters, her mind processing tactical information with the clarity that came from years of real-world survival training. What followed was a demonstration of human combat capability that redefined everything the galaxy thought it knew about Earth's species. Maya didn't fight like the other Academy species, relying on natural armor or enhanced strength or psychic abilities. Instead, she fought like humans had always fought, with tools, tactics, and an absolute refusal to surrender even when facing impossible odds. Her multi-tool became a precision weapon, striking neural clusters and joint assemblies with surgical accuracy. Her training blaster, overcharged beyond safe parameters, delivered shots that found gaps in natural armor that shouldn't have been visible to unenhanced vision. Her movement patterns incorporated techniques from a dozen different martial arts, adapted for alien physiology and hostile environments. But most importantly, she fought with the kind of desperate creativity that had carried humanity from cave-dwelling prey animals to masters of the galaxy. Every rock, every piece of equipment, every feature of the terrain became a weapon in her hands. The first bipedal hunter to reach her discovered that the small human's equipment harness contained surprises. Maya had modified her gear in ways that violated every Academy regulation, but followed principles her mother had learned in Earth's most dangerous conflicts. Flashbang charges improvised from power cells, tangle nets woven from equipment cables, and improvised projectile weapons that turned innocent supplies into deadly obstacles. The creature staggered backward, temporarily blinded and confused, giving Maya the opening she needed to execute a maneuver that would have been impossible for most species. Using the rocky outcropping like a three-dimensional battlefield, she literally ran across vertical cliff faces, her enhanced human grip strength and proprioceptive abilities allowing her to find handholds where other species would have fallen. More predators reached the summit, but they found their tactical advantage disappearing as Maya refused to fight on their terms. She turned the rocky outcropping into a maze of improvised obstacles, creating choke points where their superior numbers couldn't be brought to bear effectively. The battle evolved into something that resembled a deadly game of three-dimensional chess, with Maya using terrain, timing, and tools to negate advantages that should have made her defeat inevitable. She struck from unexpected angles, disappeared into cover that shouldn't have been able to conceal something her size, and demonstrated reflexes that seemed impossible for someone who had never shown exceptional physical abilities during academy training. But the most devastating weapon in Maya's arsenal wasn't her equipment or her techniques, it was her mind. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters, creatures that pursued their prey with relentless determination until exhaustion and terror broke their opponent's will to resist. Against predators accustomed to quick, decisive encounters, Maya's human endurance became a psychological weapon. She outlasted them. The alien predators, despite their physical superiority, weren't prepared for an opponent who simply refused to quit. Every time they thought they had her cornered, she found another escape route. Every time they adapted to her tactics, she revealed new capabilities. Every time they coordinated a perfect attack, she disrupted their formation with maneuvers that seemed impossible. Gradually, the predators' confidence began to erode. These creatures had dominated their environment through overwhelming physical advantages, but they were facing an opponent who fought with different rules entirely. Maya's human stubbornness, her refusal to acknowledge defeat, even when facing certain death, began to affect their pack dynamics. The turning point came when Maya managed to isolate one of the bipedal hunters from its pack support. Using a combination of improvised explosives and terrain manipulation, she created a rock slide that separated the creature from its allies. In the one-on-one encounter that followed, her superior tactics and equipment modifications proved decisive. The alien predator fell to her improvised weapons, its death witnessed by the remaining pack members. For creatures that had never encountered prey capable of killing one of their own, the psychological impact was devastating. They retreated to regroup, their hunting formation broken by uncertainty and something they had never experienced before, fear of their intended prey. Maya used their withdrawal to complete her tactical repositioning, moving across the rocky outcropping with the fluid grace of someone completely at home in hostile environments. She established a defensive position that would allow her to control the next phase of the encounter. When the predators returned, they found their prey had transformed the battleground entirely. Maya had turned the rocky outcropping into a fortress, using improvised engineering to create defensive positions, escape routes, and weapon emplacements that gave her tactical superiority, despite being outnumbered. The final assault was everything the predators could muster, a coordinated attack that brought both species together in a combined effort to overwhelm this impossibly stubborn prey. They came from all directions simultaneously, using their intelligence and natural weapons in perfect coordination. Maya met them with the full arsenal of human ingenuity. The battle that followed lasted only minutes but felt like hours. Explosions echoed across the jungle as Maya's improvised weapons created chaos in the predator ranks. The rocky outcropping became a storm of debris and energy discharges as she fought with equipment pushed far beyond its design limitations. When the smoke cleared, Maya stood alone among the scattered remains of creatures that had never before met prey capable of defeating them. Her equipment was destroyed, her clothing was shredded, and her body bore the marks of combat with some of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. But she was alive, victorious, and ready to complete her final objective, The aftermath of the battle was witnessed by more than just the surviving predators that fled into the jungle. Maya's communication upload had remained active throughout the encounter, broadcasting her position to the orbital station. Academy instructors monitoring the assessment had watched in stunned silence as the unremarkable human cadet demonstrated combat capabilities that exceeded anything in their training databases. But Maya was unaware of her audience. She had one objective remaining, and despite her exhaustion, she was determined to complete her mission. The malfunctioning defense turret at the abandoned research facility represented the final test of her survival skills, and she approached it with the same methodical precision she had shown throughout the assessment. The research facility had been abandoned years earlier when the planet was deemed too dangerous for sustained colonization. The defense turret was an automated system that had malfunctioned, becoming a threat to any approaching life forms. Most cadets were expected to find a way to disable it safely, demonstrating their ability to handle technical challenges under pressure. Maya reached the facility as Kepler 442b's twin suns approached the horizon, casting long shadows across the alien landscape. The defense turret was exactly as described, a sophisticated weapon system with sensors that tracked any movement within its operational radius. Its targeting algorithms were corrupted, causing it to engage anything that approached the facility perimeter. Under normal circumstances, disabling the turret would require careful analysis of its sensor patterns, followed by a cautious approach using the facility's maintenance access routes. It was a puzzle designed to test patience, technical knowledge, and risk assessment skills. Maya solved it with the direct approach that had served her throughout the assessment, using techniques her mother had taught her for dealing with automated defenses in hostile territory. She approached the turret's operational radius with equipment that shouldn't have been available to Academy cadets. Her improvised electromagnetic pulse device, constructed from salvaged power cells and equipment components, disrupted the turret's targeting systems long enough for her to reach its control housing. From there, it was a matter of applying the technical knowledge her parents had insisted she learn alongside her survival training. Within minutes, the malfunctioning defense turret had been safely disabled, its threat neutralized through a combination of electronic warfare and mechanical expertise that impressed even the Academy instructors monitoring the operation. Maya's assessment was complete. She had survived 72 hours in one of the galaxy's most hostile environments, completed all 3 objectives, and demonstrated capabilities that exceeded every expectation the Academy had for human cadets. But more than that, she had revealed the true nature of human potential in a universe that had underestimated Earth species for far too long. As extraction ships arrived to collect the assessment cadets, Maya found herself surrounded by classmates who could barely comprehend what they had witnessed. Zeftar, the Thrakari who had questioned humanity's place in combat roles, approached her with something that might have been respect in his reptilian features. "You saved my life," he rumbled, his earlier dismissive attitude completely absent. "I thought humans were weak, but you fought like something from our old legends. What are you?" Maya looked at him with the same calm expression she had worn throughout their academy training. For a moment, she considered returning to her carefully maintained facade of ordinariness, but something had changed during the assessment. Something fundamental about how she saw herself and her place in the galaxy. "I'm human," she said simply. "We're all human. This is what we do when survival is on the line." Korvek, the Zalani whose telepathic abilities had detected her unusual emotional state, coiled his serpentine body in what his species considered a gesture of deep respect. "Your mind," he said quietly, "radiates something I've never sensed before. Not just determination or courage, but something else. Something that refuses to accept defeat as a possibility." Other cadets gathered around, their attitudes toward the quiet human completely transformed by what they had witnessed. Stories were shared of mysterious rescues, of impossible survival situations that had somehow resolved favorably, of predators that had inexplicably withdrawn from certain victories. Gradually, the full scope of Maya's intervention became clear. She had spent the entire assessment ensuring the survival of her classmates while completing her own objectives and facing threats that should have been beyond any individual cadet's ability to handle. Commander Voss, the grizzled Corvalian who had briefed them before the assessment, approached Maya with an expression that combined bewilderment with grudging admiration. "Cadet Chen," he said formally, "your performance during this assessment has been unprecedented. The Academy instructors have some questions about your background and training." Maya nodded calmly. Having expected this moment, since she decided to reveal her true capabilities, her parents had always warned her that exceptional performance would attract attention, and she was prepared to face the consequences of her choices. "Sir," she replied, "I'm ready to answer any questions about my performance. I completed all assigned objectives within the specified time parameters and followed all applicable regulations." Commander Voss studied her for a long moment, his forearms moving in patterns that indicated deep thought. "The orbital monitoring systems recorded your encounter with the indigenous predators," he said slowly. "Our xenobiology experts are still analyzing the combat footage. They're saying that what you did should have been impossible for someone with your recorded physical capabilities." "Perhaps," Maya suggested quietly, "the Academy's understanding of human capabilities needs updating." As the extraction ships carried the cadets back to the Academy, word of Maya's performance spread through the Galactic Defense Forces like wildfire. The quiet human who had seemed unremarkable throughout her training had demonstrated combat capabilities that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about Earth's species. Academy instructors found themselves reviewing not just Maya's assessment, but their entire understanding of human potential. If one seemingly ordinary human cadet could display such extraordinary abilities, what did that suggest about the species as a whole? Maya Chen had entered the assessment as the quiet girl, who noticed everything, but seemed unremarkable in every way. She emerged as living proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't any single physical or mental ability, but rather their refusal to accept defeat and their willingness to sacrifice everything to help others survive. In the days that followed, Maya's story became legend throughout the Galactic Defense Academy. The quiet girl who had hidden her true nature for years had finally shown the galaxy what humans were truly capable of when their backs were against the wall. And across Earth's colonies and military installations, other humans began to wonder what they might be capable of if they stopped trying to fit into alien expectations and started embracing their own unique strengths. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest warriors had never been the loudest or most obvious. They had always been the quiet ones, the ones who watched and learned and prepared for the moment when everything would depend on their willingness to stand up and fight. No matter how impossible the odds appeared to be, Maya Chen had opened a door that could never be closed again. The age of humanity hiding its true potential was over, and the galaxy would never be the same.